The majority of men die poor, not because they lack ability, but because they never learn to think with clarity. Pause for a moment. It doesn't matter how many books you've read. It doesn't matter how hard you work this week. If you don't understand this, you will never be rich. According to Napoleon Hill, 98% of people never achieve financial freedom, not because the system is rigged against them, but because they live inside a mental prison, built by fear, reinforced by routine, and disguised as normal life. Hill called it drifting, the silent disease of moving without direction. Convinced you're trying, while repeating invisible patterns day after day. You know you were born for more. You feel it in your chest, but you still wake up in the same room, open the same app, stare at the same balance. Why? Because wealth is not a result of effort. It's a result of mental clarity plus emotional courage. And almost no one has both. The real reason you're not rich yet has nothing to do with the economy, the government, or your upbringing. It has everything to do with a silent saboteur, a hidden contract you sign with mediocrity without realizing it. And if you don't tear up that contract, if you don't break that cycle with brutal honesty, you'll become the next one, another name in the 98%. In this video, we'll expose the trap Hill uncovered nearly a century ago and why it still holds brilliant men and women hostage today, not with theory, but with mental codes, with raw truth. And one question you'll carry with you to the end: if I don't own my mind, who's cashing in on my gold? Perfect. We now enter the first descent. Fear is the tool of a man-made devil. You look in the mirror and you think you see yourself. But what if what you're actually seeing is a collection of lies you've learned to live with? There's a voice in you, calm, rational, almost helpful, that tells you to wait. Wait until you're ready. Wait until things settle down. Wait until you're more confident, more prepared, more certain. But that voice is not your friend. That voice is the devil in the mirror, the psychological parasite Napoleon Hill warned about in Outwitting the Devil. It doesn't come with horns. It comes with logic. And its job is simple: to keep you average. Hill said that 98 out of 100 people are controlled by this force. Not metaphorically, literally. Their thoughts, their actions, their destinies, all dictated by mental patterns they never chose. He called it drifting. Drifting is when a man believes he's making decisions, but every step he takes is actually a reaction to fear, to the opinions of others, to unchallenged beliefs planted in childhood, to an invisible rulebook written by people who gave up on their own dreams. If you've ever felt like you're meant for more but can't seem to move, you're not lazy. You're not unmotivated. You're drifting. And drifting is the death of wealth. Because drifting isn't passive. It's corrosive. It eats your time. It blunts your instincts. It rewards delay, disguises it as safety, and slowly turns you into a well-behaved version of your potential. Read that again. Drifting turns you into a well-behaved version of your potential. The devil in the mirror doesn't yell. It whispers. It speaks through hesitation, through the scroll you can't stop, through the job you never challenge, through the dream you keep saying someday to, but someday is his favorite word. Let me ask you something real. When was the last time you truly made a decision that scared you? Not reckless, real. Something that threatened your identity. Something that broke your comfort and demanded you evolve. If it's been a while, if you can't remember, then the devil has already made himself comfortable in your mind. Napoleon Hill knew this long before smartphones, long before Netflix, long before the algorithm. He saw it in conversations, in habits, in the eyes of men who once had ambition but traded it for safety. He wrote, "The moment one breaks the habit of drifting and takes possession of their own mind, they are on the road to riches, but possession doesn't come easy. You have to fight for it, because drifting is addictive. It feels like peace, but it's poison. It feels like safety, but it's slow death. It feels like being reasonable, but it keeps you exactly where you are. You think you're being careful, but you're just being controlled. Every time you say, I'll start next month, I just need more time, I'm not ready yet, you are reinforcing his grip. Not the devil out there, the one in here. Here's the truth most won't say. The enemy of wealth is not poverty, it's passivity. Because poverty will make you hungry, but passivity will make you numb. And you can't fight for a better life if you're numb. So here's the question Hill will want you to answer right now. Are you leading your mind or leasing it? Because if you don't occupy your mind with purpose, the devil will occupy it with fear. And fear is expensive. It costs you years. It costs you love. It costs you clarity, energy, wealth, identity, peace, everything you claim to want. And worse, it makes you believe that wanting it is enough, but it's not. Desire without action is hallucination. And drifting is the disease that turns strong men into dreamers and dreamers into prisoners. No chains, just comfort, just logic, just tomorrow, again and again, until you run out of them. You want to be rich? Then here's the first truth you have to swallow. You don't need more information. You need possession of your mind, of your time, of your will. Because wealth isn't something you chase. It's something you're either prepared to receive or destined to repel. And the devil knows exactly which one you are. Now we go deeper. You can't access new levels of wealth with the same identity that tolerated lack. This is the spiritual firewall, the invisible threshold where most turn back, not because they're weak, but because they're still trying to win with a version of themselves that was never meant to be rich. You will attract to you not what you want, but what you are. You don't get rich by changing your actions. You get rich by changing your identity, because your identity dictates every action you'll ever take. Let that settle. Most people believe success starts with doing work harder, start a side hustle, cut expenses. But all action is downstream from identity. If your identity is still tied to struggle, scarcity, or survival, no matter what you build, you'll burn it to the ground without knowing why. You've seen it. People who finally get the promotion, only to self-sabotage. People who start making money, but can't keep it. People who want more, but secretly feel guilty for receiving. Why? Because the mind may want wealth, but the identity still belongs to the poor. And the mind will always find a way to return to what the identity believes is safe, familiar, and deserved. This is why so many gifted people remain broke. They try to add wealth on top of an identity that was shaped by lack. It's like planting gold in soil poisoned by shame. It may sprout, but it won't stay. Here's what most never realize. Your current identity was not chosen. It was installed from your family, your culture, your environment, the conversations you heard growing up, the way money was talked about or avoided. If wealth was associated with greed, guilt, distance, or fear, then even as an adult, part of you still sees money as something foreign, dangerous, not yours. This isn't about affirmations. It's about neurological loyalty. The human brain is wired to seek internal consistency. If deep down, you still see yourself as someone who gets by or survives or helps others but never helps yourself, you will unconsciously reject every opportunity that contradicts that script. Even if it's the very opportunity that could change your life. Read that again. You don't resist wealth because you don't want it. You resist wealth because it doesn't match who you believe you are. Until you update that belief, you will keep building lives you eventually sabotage. Not because you hate success, but because you haven't yet become the person who can live with it. And the cost of not transforming your identity? Exhaustion. You work hard, you try everything, you chase, but it never sticks. Because your actions are ambitious, but your self-image is ancient. So what do? You do what Hill implied but didn't always say directly. You died to who you were. You dismantled a version of yourself that was taught to fear money, doubt your voice, serve others while starving your vision. You stop asking, how do I get rich? And you start asking, who do I need to stop being? That's the shift. Every man who became great first became unrecognizable. Not to the world, to himself. He looked in the mirror and saw someone who didn't need validation, didn't fear judgment, didn't flinch at the word rich. You became the kind of man wealth feels safe around. Wealth is not random. It's relational. It doesn't flow to the smartest or even the hardest working. It flows to the identity strong enough to hold it without guilt, fear, or collapse. So I'll ask you again, who are you? Not the role, not the job title, not the follower count or financial status. I'm asking, what identity are you defending that's keeping you broke? Is it the helper, the martyr, the humble one, the guy who never complains but quietly resents everyone else's success? Until you name it, you can't change it. But once you see it, once you call it out, you can do what few ever dare. Let it die. Because the identity that tolerates lack was never meant to lead your future. We move now into the illusion most never escape. Let's expose the lie. Effort, when not guided by accurate thought, ends in futility. Somewhere along the way, you were taught a dangerous half-truth, that if you just work hard enough, the money will come. You were praised for your hustle, applauded for sacrifice and sleep, told that if you just put in the hours, success was inevitable. So you did it. You gave your time. You burned yourself down to the wick. You worked longer, harder, smarter, but the breakthrough didn't come. Because you were told to sweat, but you were never taught to think. And that's where they got you. Napoleon Hill said it plain. Hard work alone is not enough. In fact, for many people, it becomes the trap. Because when you equate worth with effort, you unconsciously believe that struggle is the price you must pay to deserve abundance. Read that again. When you believe suffering earns success, you become addicted to pain, not results. You confuse motion with progress, grind with growth, burnout with proof that you care. But wealth doesn't respond to how hard you work. It responds to how clearly you think. And here's the paradox. The people who work the hardest often earn the least. Because their identity is tied to being needed, being useful, being busy, not being powerful. They wear exhaustion like a badge. They see rest as laziness. They build entire lives around doing, without ever becoming someone capable of receiving. Because receiving real wealth, real-time freedom, real ownership requires more than effort. It requires permission. And most people have never given themselves that. Why? Because they've internalized guilt. Guilt around money. Guilt around ease. Guilt around wanting more than their parents ever had. So they overwork. They overgive. They overthink. They overstay in jobs, relationships, and roles that drain them because deep down, they believe ease must be earned through pain. But that's not wealth. That's trauma. Napoleon Hill spoke of this subtly, but consistently, the need to align the mind before the labor, to act with clarity, not chaos, to become magnetic, not just mechanical. But society doesn't reward clarity. It rewards exhaustion. It idolizes the man who suffers in silence, the woman who carries more than she should, the worker who never says no. But the truth? That's not noble. That's programmed slavery with a smile. And if you don't confront that belief, it will haunt you forever. Here's the truth you were never told. Money does not respond to labor. It responds to order, to vision, to the structure of thought that aligns with abundance, not scarcity. This is why two men can work the same job, same hours, same skill, and one walks into wealth while the other stays stuck. Because one is working from identity, the other is working against it. You think the answer is more hours, more hustle, more caffeine, more content, more clients. But what if the answer is less distraction, less overthinking, less performing, and more possession, more mental ownership, more intention behind each move, more thought before force? Because until your inner world aligns with wealth, no amount of outer effort will keep it. This is the lie that breaks men in their 40s, that burns out women in their 30s, that drives gifted minds into quiet lives of resentment. They worked, they gave, they served, but they never became the version of themselves that could hold wealth without guilt. So the money came and went, and they never knew why. Until you ask, what part of me still believes I must suffer to succeed? That question is the beginning of freedom, because once you see the lie, you can burn it. And once you burn it, you make space, not just for money, but for time, for peace, for ownership of your days and your decisions. You weren't meant to die tired. You weren't designed to struggle your way to freedom. You were built to think, to decide, to create wealth from within, with clarity, not chaos. So the next time you feel the urge to work harder, pause and ask yourself, am I building a fortune or just trying to prove I deserve one? Good. Now we tear the contract, the one you didn't even know you signed. Tell me how you use your time and how you spend your money, and I will tell you where and what you will be 10 years from now. You didn't sit down and sign it. There was no pen, no lawyer, no witness in the room. But you did sign it, this quiet agreement with the ordinary, a silent contract with mediocrity. It happened slowly. You trade one dream for one doubt. You sacrifice a risk in exchange for a little certainty. You stop asking big questions and start chasing small comforts. And before you know it, you're no longer becoming. You're just maintaining. A job that doesn't stretch you. A routine that keeps you numb. A lifestyle just good enough to avoid crisis, but far from calling. And yet, you tell yourself you're grateful. You tell yourself it's realistic, that maybe this is just what adulthood looks like. But deep down, you feel it every time you watch someone else rise. Not jealousy, just that hollow ache. The whisper, I could have been more than this. That's the contract. It says, stay small, and we'll leave you alone. Don't speak too loud, and we won't shame you. Don't grow too fast, and you'll still be loved by the people who fear growth. It's not enforced with chains. It's enforced with familiarity. Because the greatest enemy of wealth isn't poverty. It's comfort without purpose. It seduces you into routines that steal your edge. It praises you for playing it safe. It rewards you for being liked, not legendary. And here's the trick. Mediocrity isn't painful enough to leave until it's too late. By the time it hurts bad enough to move, your identity is cemented. Your mind is trained. Your circle is built around your limitation, and starting over feels like betrayal. That's what the devil trades you. Not suffering, comfort. Because comfort doesn't wake you up. It lulls you to sleep, just deep enough to forget you were meant for more. But here's the truth. You weren't born to manage. You were born to multiply. You were not designed to survive bills. You were built to create legacy. Every day you delay that truth, you renew the contract. With every excuse, every next week, every goal you downgrade. Every time you tell yourself, maybe I'm not that person after all. But you are. You've just been convinced you're not by people, places, and patterns that benefit from your stagnation. So the question isn't, do I have what it takes? The question is, what am I still loyal to that no longer serves me? Loyalty is dangerous when it's unexamined. You stay loyal to jobs that devalue you, to mindsets that limit you, to friendships that tolerate you. But don't challenge you, that's the weight. Not your work, not your dream. The real weight is the silent promise you made to never outgrow the people around you. And if you don't break it, you'll spend the next decade shrinking your light just enough to be accepted. But you didn't come here to be accepted. You came here to be exceptional. And that means burning the contract. Not with fire, but with truth. With the moment you finally say, I'm done explaining my hunger. I'm done apologizing for my ambition. I'm done making myself relatable to people who gave up. Because you are not here to blend in. You are here to build a new standard for your bloodline, your future, your name, not a motivation. A moment. The moment you stop making room for average. The moment you refuse to renew the contract. The moment you realize being liked is not worth being broke. Now we ascend. This is the inner architecture of receiving. Wealth begins here, in the invisible. There is a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. Everyone says they want to be rich, but most aren't ready to be seen as rich. Most aren't ready to carry the weight of wealth, the judgment, the responsibility, the change in relationships, the expansion of identity. They want the money. But they're still mentally married to the version of themselves that survives without it. And so they repel it, not by intention, by frequency. Because money isn't just numbers in a system, it's energy. And energy is relational. You don't attract what you wish for. You attract what you normalize. If wealth still feels unrealistic, if you still say things like, people like me don't, or I'm not one of those types, you're not poor because of fate. You're poor because your mind is in conflict with wealth. Napoleon Hill didn't write Think and Work Harder. He wrote Think and Grow Rich because thinking is where the gate opens. Not just any thinking, harmonized thinking. Thoughts that match your vision, beliefs that support your decisions, language that reflects your new standard, not your old story. Here's the truth that most can't stomach. You can only receive the amount of wealth that your nervous system is willing to hold. You can be skilled, talented, deserving. But if your subconscious still links wealth with danger, loss, betrayal, or guilt, it will reject money the moment it arrives. Through sabotage, through distraction, through chaos disguised as life happening. So no, the money isn't late. You're not ready. And readiness doesn't mean perfection. It means reconstruction. It means tearing out the emotional blueprint that was given to you by generations who never tasted freedom. It means auditing every belief you inherited from people who taught you that money changes people, without asking if staying broke ever saved them. Being rich in mind means you no longer fear having more. It means you no longer believe that poverty is a virtue. It means you start speaking as someone who owns their destiny, not begs for opportunity. And that shift, that's what unlocks the vault. Because wealth isn't kept from you. It's kept from the version of you that doesn't respect it yet. Let me be clear. If money still makes you uncomfortable, if rich people still trigger you, if you still feel safer struggling, because at least it's familiar, you are not ready to receive. You are still practicing resistance, and resistance is expensive. It costs you not only the money, but the life that money was supposed to support, the peace, the options, the freedom, the legacy. But when your mind becomes rich, you walk different. You choose different. You surround yourself with builders, not complainers. You stop arguing for your limits. You stop chasing and start claiming. And that's when the world shifts around you. Not because it changed, because you stopped negotiating with lack. Napoleon Hill said it best. Riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. That's not to say you won't work. You will. But your work will come after alignment, not before it. You'll no longer be throwing energy into misaligned goals. You'll be moving from conviction, not desperation. And conviction is magnetic. You'll notice money starts showing up through channels you didn't expect. Because now you're operating from receiving, not begging. Now your energy says, I'm not hoping for it. I'm built for it. That's the real work. To build a mind that can carry the weight of wealth without folding under pressure. So let me ask you something. Do you think like someone who manages lack? Or like someone who multiplies legacy? Be honest. Not about what you want. About what you believe you are allowed to have. Because until that changes, the numbers won't matter. The bank will stay the same. And wealth will remain a rumor, not a reality. But once you shift that, Once you become rich in thought, word, and decision, the world has no choice but to match you. Because wealth is not the reward. It's the reflection. Shall we complete the journey? Here we arrive. Not at the end, but at the place where endings become decisions. This is where we reclaim power, not as force, but as alignment, quiet, absolute, yours. You have absolute control over but one thing, and that is your thoughts. Pause here. Let everything you heard settle. Let the noise in your mind dissolve. Let the mask fall, the one you've worn for years. Because wealth is not something you achieve. It's something you remember. Underneath the fear, the drift, the guilt, the programming, you've always known. Known that you were meant for more, not for applause, not for ego, but because your soul remembers the assignment to become sovereign. All along, you've been told to earn your worth, to prove your value, to sweat your way to freedom. But the truth is simpler, older, quieter. You were born with the code. You were told to chase. But what if you were meant to reveal? Power isn't loud. It doesn't beg. It doesn't rush. It knows. And this moment right here is your return to knowing. Not the kind that screams goals on paper. The kind that looks in the mirror with calm eyes and says, I remember who I am. You are not the poor decisions, not the missed opportunities, not the debt, the doubt, or the delay. You are the one who gets to decide what all of it meant. The one who takes the pain and turns it into blueprint. The one who breaks the cycle not with anger, but with clarity. Because power is not force, it is removal. The removal of stories that never belonged to you. The removal of roles that kept you contained. The removal of fear dressed up as strategy. Now, there is only this: choice. To live as the version of yourself that wealth can trust. The version who no longer needs to be convinced. The version who no longer waits for permission. And that version, he doesn't chase money. He attracts responsibility. He holds wealth like a king holds silence, without needing to explain it. This is the return to power. The power to think your own thoughts, to build your own code, to reclaim your own rhythm, not the algorithms. Because this game was never about being liked. It was about becoming undeniable. And the minute you stop asking the world to reward you for effort and start commanding from identity, the game flips. You become the source, not the seeker. That's where the money lives. That's where the peace lives. That's where you've lived all along beneath the noise. You don't need more motivation. You need to decide that the old version of you has served its purpose, and it's time to bury it with gratitude and rise. Rich in mind, rich in movement, rich in meaning. You're not chasing anymore. You're claiming.